you just don't know a lot of times until you delve deeper into that person.
People date based off of their level of confidence.
My primary factor for me dating me now is me. How do you show up for me?
I can hold it down if he can't hold it down. He can hold it down if I can't hold it down. But we are growing together.
There's no romance without the finance.
Welcome to Boo Chronicles. Welcome back. We are so excited to welcome two new guests today. We are excited about having this show right before the holidays start and bringing you some more new perspectives from some sisters who have more experience than some of us, our last guests. This is a follow-up to our last show that we had, which was episode 9, that featured some 20-something who had some certain things to say about their experiences in the dating world. And they had some real interesting standards. They also had some real thoughts about what they would and wouldn't do, what they wanted and what they didn't want, what they liked and what they didn't like, what they would and wouldn't stand for. And so we have gathered some girls here today who can give us some wisdom from the things that they have learned based on what some of the ladies said the last time. And so today we have LaTanya Johnson joining us from Maryland. We also have Leslie Dancer joining us from Maryland as well. My name is Nicola Staples. I'm with my partner, Angela Palmer. And with that, we will jump right into it.
Welcome to Boo Chronicles. What's love?
What's love got to do with it? We've been talking about the one, the person who is the person that you know is the partner that you have been designed with for life. The person who checks all the boxes, the person who, at least in terms of the boxes that you had, whether they're the right or wrong boxes is another question. The person that you knew that you were supposed to be with from the beginning. My question to you is, and we'll start with you, Leslie. Have you found the one? And if so, how do you know?
Have I found the one? Yes. Finally.
Okay.
And I know, yes, I know because the love language that I have now for myself, he speaks that same love language and he understands it.
Can you say more about love languages? We have not really discussed that on this show. So if you would help us to better understand that would be great.
Yeah, so love language. So for me, my love language is, I guess I can say, acts of service. If I just wonder if I can just kind of wrap it up in one big ball. I love giving, I love loving, and my partner loves that same way. He understands that. He understands acts of service. Even when it doesn't feel like it's an act of service, it's an act of service. You know, just the small things. It's not the big things, it's the small, intangible things that works for me.
Great, thank you. And getting to that point in terms of understanding the things that were a requirement for you, how did you refine what the one was for you over time?
So I guess if I reflect back from, can I go back to when I was I'll say maybe 18. So
Sure.
From 18, 20s, 30s, 40s, I had different requirements. Like when I was younger, my requirements were more aesthetic, right? He had to have a certain build. He had to look a certain way. He had to wear a certain type of gear. Like those were the things that were a requirement for me. And as I got older, my priorities changed. And I think that with maturity, you know, you look for someone that is on your level. What I mean when I say that is people date based off of their level of confidence, in my opinion. It's just my opinion. People date based off the level of confidence. You see a great person, they're doing great things. And if you know and feel and believe that within yourself, you know, you're going to go for it too. And you're going to feel comfortable being in that space. I wasn't always that way. I was like, yeah, well, you know, he looked good. So let me take my shot, or let me allow him to take his shot with me. But looks fade. And that's a real thing. So when I turned 30, I had my first baby in my late 20s. When I turned 30, life changed. And so priorities changed. And so I had to have someone that was fiscally responsible. And that didn't always come in this strong, handsome package of a man with a six-pack and all those great things. It didn't come with a man that sometimes probably didn't even have a car, So, in your 30s, you're still learning too. But I think it's important to know that, it's okay to not know, but as long as you're continuing to go forward. So as I matured, my priorities changed, and my confidence level changed as well. So for me, I was dating based off of my confidence level and what I was comfortable with.
So I have a question. I want to jump in. The first question is, you said your confidence level. I'd like you to tell me what that means, because I'm not sure what that means. But my comment is that it sounds like, and so you can correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you're saying that when you were the non-seasoned millennial, when you were younger, it was all about, ooh, he's fine, he looked good,
Right.
ooh. But now you're saying that the fiscal responsibility, so finances, played a role. Now that's very similar to what our current millennials were saying to us in the last show, that finance mattered at that age. So I think it's, on one hand, you could say maybe they're at an evolved thinking at a younger age, because it's just that I just think that is interesting, because evolved to that, but they're starting with that.
Yeah. So finance when I was younger didn't matter because I didn't have any responsibilities necessarily. And I think that today, the youth, they're doing things that we probably did later in our years. And so they're exposed to a little bit more and they have more access. I come from the Midwest. I grew up in a town, Joliet, small town outside of Chicago. I think in the 70s and 80s, you didn't really have a lot of access. I mean, when you want to write for a scholarship, you're writing for a scholarship and mailing it in and you're waiting at the mailbox. Now it's just a click. So everything is easy for them to, well, I'm going to say it's easy for them to get the information. I didn't get that information until later. So fiscally being responsible fiscally was not a priority. Looking good, being okay with hanging out, going to the parties, doing all the things, that was important to me, right? Until life said, hello, hey, guess what? Then finances became a priority for me.
Do you expect that to be all him?
I do not. So I will say that I believe there was a young lady that said everything had, her expectation is that, her partner, her husband pays for everything. I can guarantee you when she gets older, that might change. Because when you think about a partnership, it's exactly that. It's a partnership and it's understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses. Like when you're partnering with someone, the intent is to make each other better so that you can move forward and grow together. But for me, yes, finances is important because I have a lot of financial responsibilities. My expectation is not for my partner to come in and take that over. But if we're going to live this life together, the understanding is that I can hold it down if he can't hold it down. He can hold it down if I can't hold it down. But we are growing together.
Can I intercede in that commentary?
Absolutely. We were coming to you next.
I wanted to say too, I'm a native Washingtonian. So my messaging, especially from my dad, and let me just say I'm a daddy's girl, has always been there's no romance without the finance. So that was the messaging even in high school. Like if a boy thinks he's going to kiss you, he needs to be able to afford to take you out on a date, whether you're going to the movies, he should be able to afford to do those things. Whether you're in high school, whether I drive and you don't have your license, if you're driving, he needs to put gas in the car. Like, so there was always this messaging of reciprocation kind of for me and my sisters given. And in my household, my parents will be celebrating 50 years next year. And so my mother would handle all the finances. So in my household, it was the opposite of what these young women were talking about. My mother was a bookkeeper by trade. She was better with the money. So for me, my messaging and my growing up has always been you lead and you kind of delve into each other's strengths. So if you're stronger, if I'm stronger with the finances, I know how to make the money stretch further. Not to say that she didn't consult my father. Yes, he was consulted, but she was the one that wrote the check out. She was the one that managed the books. She was the one that said, okay, we're going to be short here and kids' Christmas is coming up. So it was, and it wasn't that my dad led, right? He worked however many jobs he needed to work to make it work. But my mother also contributed to that. So that meant if my mother ended up having to take a part-time job, because they both at some point in my childhood worked 2 jobs, right? Because I was getting ready to go to college. So they were like, okay, we need to make some extra money. We got college applications coming up. We want to try to be able to help her do this, right? I was the first of my siblings to go to college. So I think, you start out one way. And even what does that messaging of no romance without the finance still mean, right? And I think in your 20s, to what Leslie's point, it means one thing. And it looks a certain way. And that look comes with an aesthetic, right? I want him to be the freshest gear. I want him to be attractive. But then you start moving into those emotional intelligence components that the young lady spoke about on the last episode. And for me, I would say now, yes, finance is always going to be an issue because you have to have money to live, right? But it's about what does that look like and what's realistic. And there are going to be sacrifices that have to be made in different points in time throughout your growth cycle in a relationship. And that does mean that sometimes it might start out him doing 70-30, but as lives, you might have to end up doing 70-30. And now you're taking the lead on the responsibility, right? But that doesn't also mean that it's forever. So I think what we need to understand is that there are times of growth, right? We look at the Bible to the young lady who was like, we look at our harvesting, we look at our sowing cycles, right? And we have to understand what cycle we're in, one as an individual and then within our relationship.
That's a mouthful. So that's interesting that you said that, because both of you guys have talked about evolution and how you start one way, and then as you learn, time, lessons and experiences and relationships teach you something else. LaTanya, have you found the one? And then secondly, what's different about dating you now versus dating you then?
Well, no, I have not found my one. I thought I had found my several ones, as some of us do, right? But no, I have not found my one. And I think what's different in dating me now versus then is that now, to Leslie's point, right? Yes, finances are still important to me because I'm at an age level where I'm looking towards retirement, right? My retirement is in the next 15 to 20 years. So having someone that is fiscally responsible, that is financially stable, because I have a home, I'm a homeowner. I would love to have someone that is a homeowner so that we have multiple properties. We can have a financial base of growing that level of real estate, to the young lady's point of having multiple things. Now, I mean, it's not always realistic to have multiple things. And I think multiple avenues of revenue can be, I have stocks for myself. I have different whole life insurance policies. Those are other forms of revenues that I can tap into for myself should I need to, right? And I think looking to someone who's fiscally responsible, it might not come with another side hustle, quote unquote, but it may be that they have other financial streams that they've done for themselves. And now I'm looking to how can we do this, to Leslie's point, as a real partnership. My children are grown, so they're not a primary factor. You know, as a parent, your children will always be a factor, but they're not my primary factor. My primary factor for me dating me now is me. How do you show up for me? What are you contributing to me? What are you bringing to me? How do you treat me? And I think that's not to say that that wasn't a primary factor, but I think younger, I was so focused on how a person would, you know, come in and interact with my children and treat my children, which more of a factor for me than probably myself overall.
So LaTanya, in dating now, do you require a seafood tower to take you out? Would you go out with, you know, fiscally responsible Joe, we'll call him, that maybe he doesn't have a house? In other words, you may have more in terms of the finances. Would he be disqualified, or is he considered?
No,
When I say that, I don't mean he comes with zero. He's rubbing nickels together in his pockets.
Mhm.
But you've explained what you have. Does he have to have equal to that? Or if he has less, is that okay?
I think now when we say less, I'm going to be honest, I don't want a significant less. Like if we're talking about 10,000, maybe $20,000 difference, maybe I would consider that. I don't think, in my experience, when I've dated men that made considerably less, like I'm talking about like $25,000, $30,000 less, that is conducive. Like their egos, a lot of times, or the way I live and the things that I'm a part of and the things that I do, they're not financially able to truly contribute and enjoy that. So I just don't think, for me, making considerably less would be feasible for me.
But he doesn't have to have 175,000 to
No.
take you off the
No. I just think living in the DMV, to be realistic, at this, I mean, if you're over 40, you need to be making at least $80,000 minimum and above to truly live and be able to try to save and do in the DMV area.
So if he doesn't have that, you're not interested?
No.
Okay.
Would you say, and I know, Leslie, you've been out of the dating game for a minute, but would you say that most people that you run into now, LaTanya or Leslie, when you were dating, were ready in the same way you were?
No.
I think it's in the middle for me.
Say more.
So when I was dating, I met some really decent individuals. They made really great money, right? But what I found was they made great money, but there were still things missing. And they led with the money. They led with where they lived, what type of car they drove. They led with, well, I can take you here, but the thing is, that's great that you could do all these great things, but are you interested in me, or is it just really about, aesthetics? When I was dating, it was always the question of, well, where do you work, and what do you do? And those are important questions, right, to get to. But I think that if you want to get to know a person, I think that getting to know that person goes a lot deeper than where you work, what you do. Because listen, since I've been with my other half, I've changed jobs several times, so what I'm doing today doesn't necessarily mean that that's what I'm doing tomorrow. But I didn't like that. It was pretty tasteless to me. So, I had what I call the starting five.
Okay. Let's hear it.
And yeah, so the starting five for me, it left options. And I was very open and honest with anyone that I met. Like, I have a starting five. I'm available, right? If this person didn't work, I'd rotate that person off and pull the next person in. But I was honest. It wasn't a thing.
Plan. You playing.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. It wasn't a thing of me playing, but I was very honest with every individual I met who wanted to exchange numbers and maybe, go on a date or whatever. I was honest. I was honest. And I think that for me, having that starting five was me again evolving again, right? And being intentional with what I want and how I want things to be for myself, but also being open to, seeing other people. I think a lot of times we, as women, we meet that person, we think that that person is the one, and we just lock it down and we don't see anything else, right? That's good and that's bad, right? But for me, I wanted to leave my options open for what I felt worked for me and what was comfortable for me. And, God presented it to me.
When did you know that it was time to do something different, or either starting five? When you found the one, I'm assuming that at one point he was part of that rotation, and then you decided that's enough, this is it. What was it about that one for you? And because it varies wildly for every person, but what was it about that one that made you say, this is it?
Oh, God. He is absolutely patient with me. I am not always the easiest person, right? But I found that we were just like the yin and the yang. And I know that just sounds so cliche, right? But it worked. It was such a natural, it was a natural thing. Like when I said to him, I was like, I have a starting five. His response was, oh, they'll be all gone off the bench, but I'm patient, right? And I know that saying of if a man wants you, he's gonna do whatever it is that he has to do to, he could have walked away. He could have said, yeah, I'm not gonna be part of that. But he didn't. He stuck around. And I'm gonna be honest. Listen, I am not missed by the fact, first of all, he's good looking. So I am not missed by the fact that he may have had some folks too.
He had a starting five too, huh?
Yeah, probably had a starting 10, 12, but he had some folks that he probably had to sweep out the door as well. But we dated for a few months, and we sat down and we had a conversation. I asked him, "Are we in a relationship?" Right? He said, well, I know I've been in a relationship with you. And I was like, oh, okay, so let me catch up. Right. And then that was the point. There was a few months that we had been together that I had asked that question. And it was at that point that I said, you know what? Okay, he's absolutely serious. And so I'm absolutely serious. And I was just feeling him from the very beginning, but just it works. I don't even know if I can truly describe it, but it just works.
Okay.
So what would you tell your younger self in terms of what you needed back then versus what you found when you found him? Yeah. What would you tell your younger self to look for in finding the one?
Patience, intelligence. Make sure that this individual not only can love on you, but can love on himself, truly love on himself, and love his family. In this case, it would be, his parents, mother, father, siblings. Pay attention to how that individual interact with other people, like their friends, the people around them. Listen to whether or not this person has a level of patience, not just with you, but with anything. How does this person respond in a time of crisis? When that person is under pressure, does that person just go crazy and blow up? Right? Those are the things that I will tell my younger self, to pay attention to, and to also be patient with herself, and understand that the only thing you can't buy back is time. So time is precious.
Thank you.
I guess I would ask, this may be a similar question to Latanya, a different way. You listened to what the last panel said, the women said in the last panel. Were there anything said to you that jump out like, they're not thinking about X, Y, or Z, or this is what they're not considering when they answered these questions?
You know what? Yes, there were several things, because even in the beginning, when you guys asked about some of the dating, and like there was like a timeline. What I didn't hear about is how they vet who they date, right? And I think there is a vetting process that needs to happen. And so when the guys came in and one of the young men asked about, are you okay? Or no, I think it was the young lady that asked, well, are you okay? How is it perceived if I say, I don't want to go out to dinner with you, I just want to go to Starbucks with you, to get to know you, right? So to me, that is important. That's actually how I approach dating. To Leslie's point about time, I don't know on the first time I'm meeting you that I want to spend an hour or an hour and a half sitting at a restaurant with you. And Starbucks is my favorite place. So I'm willing to meet up with you at a Starbucks and let's have coffee or tea and a pastry and let's just have a genuine conversation, because I think there's no pressure at that point, right? It's like, hey, we're just meeting up. We're going to chit chat over to coffee. Let's see how it goes. And then if the conversation can truly flow and we feel a level of interest, then I can say, or he can say, you know what, I would want to take this person out to dinner. I would want to take this person out on a real date and let's see where this goes. I think at the 20 and 30 stages, dating is expensive. And I think
it is or it isn't.
It is expensive, because a movie is almost $60 now. Like in the 90s, you go to a movie, two people for $25, right? So now we're talking about, because the movie has food, it has drink. It's like literally by the time you do the tickets, you do a popcorn box, it's $50, right? And if you're expecting this young man to be fiscally responsible, right? So he has to do what? Budget. He needs to live within his means for the things that he's trying to be intentional about. And you should respect that as a woman wanting a man to be intentional with you, for him to say, hey, you know what? This is what's in my budget. And I think more of us need to be able to say and do that, because you're sitting up here and you're looking at Instagram and you're looking at TikTok and you're trying to keep up with these quote unquote imaginary Joneses, and you really don't know what people are really doing to make this money to keep the cars that they have. We know that there's a lot of catfishing, a lot of scamming in the dating pool going on. So I think the vetting process needs to happen. And you can't just vet a person talking to them over the phone. A lot of times you need to lay your eyes on a person. You need to look at their body language and how they interact with even the waitress. And if I go out with a man and he's rude to the help, that's going to tell me I don't even want to go further with you, because you don't have a sense of respect for somebody who, in your mind, whose status is somewhat beneath you, right? Or how you look at that. So to me, those types of behaviors will tell you a lot about who a person genuinely is, because there's a mask that you can't just keep on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the more experience you have, the easier it is to kind of see that. When you're younger, you don't necessarily see it. But I think, to Leslie's point, though, younger people are ahead of us in terms of getting information, understanding what people are, that kind of thing, because so much more is available. The thing that you don't have, though, even though you have more information, you still don't have wisdom. That comes with growth and time. So one of the things that we look for now is to try to find out what are some of the things that we could have taken a look at that we hadn't in the past. And with that, we want to bring in mental health. Do either one of you have any mental health red flags, and how much of a factor has it played in your selecting a partner?
Oh, I definitely have mental health red flags. You know, the gaslighting, to try to start an argument that doesn't need to be an argument, the not listening to both sides. Like, you just want your point to be made and you're not listening to anything else that's being said. Also, just kind of the manipulation. And those are things that you would have had to experience to be able to recognize them a lot of times. And when you see those things, and I think one young lady talked about it from a standpoint of, you know, a person buying you bags and that person could be a monster, right? Like, you know, you just don't know a lot of times until you delve deeper into that person. Sometimes you can find that out before, you know, you have a kid with that person, hopefully. Sometimes you don't find that out until you marry that person or you have a kid with that person. And now you're in it, right? Because you made a commitment and you're thinking about your family structure. But then it's like, well, how long do you stay? Because we always talk about the physical abuse in relationships, but we don't always talk about the emotional and verbal abuse that can happen in a relationship that can truly and that happens on both sides, because women can be equally verbally abusive to men, and how that truly knocks you down and it messes with your self-worth. It can mess with your confidence and how you show up as a shell of yourself as a person. So I think the one young lady, she got a little taste of that, and she may want to, she's probably looking at people now when she dates them for those certain behaviors that didn't sit too well with her. And you do have to recognize those things, and there's different levels to those red flags, right? Because it could be we're just snarky and sarcastic, and that's our banter, and we don't consider that verbal abuse. Someone else might. So understanding who you are, how you show up, how you respond to certain things, right? First, understanding that about yourself and what your triggers are from a mental health capacity, and then seeing if that person has that same level of accountability within themselves. And if they don't, and everything is everybody else's fault, and they can't take any accountability for any of their behavior, that is an ultimate no for me. I'm just going to cut it off. We're not going any further, because I'm looking for men have to and women have to take accountability for how they show up, how they behave, how they respond. We can only control ourselves. I can't control anyone else. I can only control LaTanya in that scenario, and I'm expecting you to have that same control over yourself.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you. Angie?
No, I'm gonna say and I think that's important. You're right. It's all about self-control. So the younger LaTanya didn't know about self-control, and the older LaTanya knows that that's what it takes. So I think that's great.
All right, great.
A lot of growth.
Yeah. I'm sorry for stepping on that. We are
No, I
about
just wanted to say a lot of growth. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, for us all. We're about to wrap up. If you guys could each take 30 seconds to tell us what's the single most important thing you'd like to share with other young women looking for love. 30 seconds.
I'm gonna let Leslie start.
Okay.
All right. 30 seconds. All right, here we go. Love yourself, love yourself, love yourself. I think that is so important. Put time before money, because you can always get the money, but you can never get back the time. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to show up for yourself, whatever that looks like. I think now young girls and men, when we're talking about the mental health question that you just asked, they have the ability, they have the access, they have the tools. Take advantage of the tools, Be okay with not being okay. Always have that person that you can go to and that you can trust, that you can confide in. I think that those things are very important, and that'll make you a stronger, better person. And
Thank you.
reflection, always reflect.
Thank you, ma'am. LaTanya?
You're welcome.
I'm gonna say similar to what Leslie said. Number one is love yourself first. If you can't love yourself, you can't exude love to others. Also, don't be so quick to sacrifice your wants and needs for someone else's wants and needs. Making sure that this person is making you a priority and not an option. Because you want him to be your priority, and you should be his priority. And also taking time over money. I think time and money are equal for me. Because you have to show up for yourself, you have to show up for your family. And within showing up, that means providing for your family. And it takes two people to do that. And so the last thing I'm going to say is always date each other. No matter what is going on, make the time to date each other. Dating does not end once you're married. Once you're in this serious relationship, you're living together, you're about to get engaged, you have to date each other. And not only do you have to date each other when you have your children, you have to date your kids too. You have, as parents, you have to make time to take your kids out. Your kids want one-on-ones with each of you. They want you all together. So you all have to make time to date everybody in the household at some point in time.
That's great. Well, you heard it here first. Thank you so much, ladies, LaTanya Johnson and Leslie Danzer, for joining us. We really appreciate you guys coming on. Stay tuned for Boo Chronicles. What's Love Got to Do with It? Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.